When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Good morning, everybody. How are we? I feel a bit ashamed by that introduction, actually, at the back of his garden, because I'm speaking to a lady today who, over the last 5 or 6 months, I have been tracking. I have been stalking her virtually across the world to try to get her on the show. And she's a bit further than the back of her garden. She's actually in Vietnam at the moment. So it's going to be an amazing conversation, this, especially for the people out there that have got that urge for a bit of a travel and don't really know, the pitfalls, the stumbles, the successes, or just financially how to actually pull it off. So this lady is going to give us a blueprint to travel, and I'm sure all of us will going to be quitting our jobs, divorcing our wives, and steaming across the world to Vietnam because it's her birthday coming up soon, so we can all meet in a bar. That'd be quite nice. Right, today's guest has, from her first family vacations, wanted to be free. She was always the child kicking up a fuss when her parents told her it was time to go home. And she was always the child literally counting off the days until holidays came round again. So it's with little surprise that upon reaching adulthood, that freedom of spirit has overtaken her and she has undertaken a series of footsteps in the unknown. Never-ending Footsteps, in fact, which is the name of her blog and the perfect description of her life in distant shores. Starting the dream in 2006, it took her 5 years of extreme effort, working 3 jobs, overcoming a series of anxiety disorders, and saving everything she could to ensure that her dream of travel could be fulfilled. And on the 17th of July 2011, she departed whilst crying like a baby. Poor her. And now, nearly 3 years later, as her footsteps are able to be traced across 45 countries and 5 continents, it seems she has no real desire to return to England and settle back into a normal life. And why should she, since she has now found a way of funding her adventures by blogging, writing and other online activities too. She's become a digital nomad and is loving every second of her life away from the rain and the cold. And as I'm recording this today, it is pouring down, so she's made the right decision. If this seems the perfect life, then think again. As with all things that seem an instant success, there are a collection of stumbles, falls, financial mistakes and hardships that would make many people return to the safety of their home. But today's guest is made of sterner stuff than that and is a perfect guest for a show like Join Up Dots. So let's introduce to you the one and only English lady too, which I love, Lauren Juliff. How are you today, Lauren?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You have got a life that I envy. I'm going to cut to the chase. As I'm reading that, and I am sitting at the back of my garden, I think to myself, this is a life that is simply a wow. You can go anywhere you want within reason. Yep. You've got your connectivity back to home through your laptop, and you are funding yourself. Does it blow your mind as you're sitting there in Vietnam, a million miles away from your sort of previous life, I suppose, in England? Do you go, oh my God, how did this really happen?
Yes, all the time. I seem to have at least one moment every week where I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is the life that I always wanted but never thought was actually possible. I know that when I first left England, I thought that I'd be traveling for a year and then I'd run out of money and come home. And the thought that I could have continued, I've been going for 3 years now, so the thought that I could have traveled for 3 years and still be funding my adventures would have blown my mind.
Well, I think it blows everyone's mind, to be honest, because I go away on a 2-week family holiday to Spain. It cost me a fortune just eating. I went on holiday a couple of years ago and I was so shocked by the exchange rate. I actually survived on toast for 2 weeks because I wouldn't eat anything. And,
wow.
And my wife got so angry with me and she said, you are ruining the holiday. And I'm saying, no, you lot can eat whatever you want. I will pay for it, but I can't justify £8 for a sandwich. I am not paying it. And so the next time we went, she said to me, don't ever do that again. You are not surviving on toast. And I went, no, okay, I won't. So I bought 2 boxes of Weetabix and I lived on that for 2 weeks as well. So I can't imagine how you can do that. And so I'm sure the listeners are the same. How can you fund yourself as a digital nomad nowadays?
Well, it comes from a few different sources. I work online, so I can work from anywhere that has an internet connection. And most of my money comes from Ending Footsteps, my travel blog. But it also comes from several other sources. So freelance travel writing. And I use Ending Footsteps as a portfolio to find freelance writing jobs. And there's a couple of editing jobs that I do as well. Occasionally I'll sell some of my photos I take. And it's just kind of a mixture of lots of different odd jobs that I push together to find a way to fund it.
And so are you a lady with hustle muscle? Do you go out every day thinking, how can I make that into money? How can I turn that into income? Or is it something now that has fallen into a sort of natural pattern for you?
It's a bit of both. At the moment, I feel like it feels very natural. I'm having companies contact me and wanting to hire me to write for them rather than normally I'd be going around and emailing 30 companies a day trying to find some writing gigs. So it feels like after about 3 years of trying to build the connections, now it seems like people are finding me and contacting me. So hopefully that will continue. But there are times when the money's low and I have to suddenly freak out and send a load of emails around.
So do you ever send an email back to mum and dad? Or is that the one that you think, no, if I do that, they're going to drag me home?
I actually speak to my parents quite a lot. Skype is great for that. I will speak to my family about once a week, actually. So I'm pretty good at keeping in touch. My mum was terrified when I first left to travel, and she's still a bit frightened now. She thinks that I'm probably going to die on the road. So I make sure to keep in touch with them every few days so they know where I am and they know that I'm safe and they know that I'm happy. But yeah, I do think that they definitely would be happier if I was closer to home, definitely.
But what about the sort of financial email? When you email Dad and go, Dad, you couldn't send me a few quid. Have you ever had to do that?
I fortunately have not had to do that. No, I had quite a large amount of savings when I left. I worked for 5 years to build up a lot of savings, and I'm pretty much broke even in over the last 3 years.
I think even at this point, we could stop the show now, which I'm not going to, but we could stop it and we could say, this is the learning path for all of us, that it's taken you 3 years to hit that tipping point where people are aware of you and they are actually finding you out. And it's a liberating point, isn't it? When you've actually worked and you worked and you worked and nobody's paying any attention to you. And then suddenly somebody's emailing you to say, would you like to work for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think that moment would happen, especially in the beginning where I had no idea what I was doing. I was a pretty terrible writer as well when I first started, so I really had to work to improve my writing skills. I had to learn how to pitch people. I'd never written like a travel article before I traveled, so I had to learn how to write about travel, which not just saying like, oh, the beach was nice, the ocean was warm. So there was definitely a steep learning curve, and in the beginning it definitely didn't seem like something that would be possible.
And it must be quite difficult being an English lady to actually write that the ocean is warm, because if you've had family holidays like I've had, where you're basically crowded on a beach in jumpers, it's not fun at all. So can you remember your childhood? Because when I've been reading your blog, and I must admit, I'm going to touch on it later because a lot of it made me laugh out loud because it's been unpleasant for you. And I don't wish that on anyone. But some of the things I will say, Lauren, it's just bad luck that it's happened. And others that I will talk about, I think to myself, Lauren, what were you doing? It's quite obvious that that's going to happen. But if you go back to your childhood family holidays, what kind of were they? What were they like? Why were they so sort of miserable, as you say in your blog?
Okay, So we'd go to Devon for our family holiday each year, and we'd end up in a tiny little caravan, really cramped and all cooped up together, and it would rain non-stop and the weather would be awful. So we wouldn't be able to go outside, we wouldn't be able to explore or actually see anything in Devon. We'd just sit in this really dark caravan without any heating and argue and fight all the time. So yeah, those holidays were really miserable. They weren't enjoyable in any way. We were just arguing the entire time. And then as I got a bit older, we'd go to Spain on holiday, and we'd go to resorts and go to rent villas for the week. And I enjoyed that a lot more, mostly because of the weather.
Well, I think that the weather is the key thing, because when I was growing up, I had similar holidays.
Yes.
And
it's really miserable. I'd much rather go to Europe or elsewhere.
Well, yeah, I think everyone would. It's one of the things, but I hate board games. If anybody mentions Monopoly to me, or Cluedo, or any of those ones, it just takes me back to those miserable caravan holidays as you had, where you couldn't go out, it was pouring rain, and cards, that's another one. Anybody mentions playing a game of cards, I can't bear it. I will run a mile from that. So yeah, it's funny how your life, maybe that's just the English way. Maybe we all left our lovely houses for a week a year to go and have torture in this baked bean can, where the rain just lashed on there. As you say, there was no heating. It was freezing cold in the morning. And then you spent half the time in cloudy conditions being pounded by the wind on the beach, saying, this is fun. It wasn't, was it? It was just, It was just dreadful.
No, it really wasn't. But that was, a lot of my holidays were like that.
And then when I started going to Europe, I was 11 when I first went to Europe. We went from the rain situation to diarrhea. Don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. And every second of the day, your parents were saying to you, you haven't drunk that water. Don't have ice in the drink. Don't have this. Don't have that. And that was pretty miserable as well, really.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me. And now I go to Spain all the time and I'm perfectly fine drinking the tap water. And I'm not quite sure why my parents would always be like, no, you can't drink that. But that happened to me as well. I know that my parents were really nervous going abroad to a foreign country, especially where they didn't speak the language. So we would kind of hole up in a resort and be too frightened to step outside and actually see some of the country.
What was the first country you did? So on the 17th of July, well, actually, I'm going to go back further than that. My head is full of questions I want to ask you. So going back, you had the standard, I would say, girls' journey on this, where you was at school and you had sort of Saturday jobs and during the evening. And you worked at Iceland, I believe, which is our sort of local supermarket, where the strapline in England is mums go to Iceland. And so what were you doing in that supermarket on a Saturday?
I was stacking shelves, not very well because I'm not very strong. And I was just sat on the checkout, scanning through frozen food, pretty bored, really.
And was it at that time that you thought to yourself, there must be more to life than this?
I think so. Yeah, it was definitely that. It was pretty soul destroying to just do the same thing every week. And I'd be working with people that didn't really have any motivation to develop themselves or do anything more than work at the supermarket. There'd be people that had been working there for 50 years. And it blew my mind, really. And it made me definitely want to stop working there and see what else there was outside of the UK.
So have you been to Iceland, the actual country?
Yes, I was there a couple of months ago for the first time.
And what was it like? Did you spend all the time sort of thinking back to the supermarket, or was it that time in your life has just been blanked out?
I thought about it a little bit because I know that when I worked at Iceland, I would always joke about, I have to go to Iceland when I go traveling. And so I did think about it and think about how far I've come, definitely. But yeah, Iceland, the country, is much more enjoyable than Iceland, the supermarket.
Well,
And it was really beautiful.
I think you're right, and that's why they don't say dads go to Iceland. It's a
Yes.
place we try to keep away from. So,
Yes.
really, what I want to get down to is you. Leading up to the leap of faith on the 17th of July, you had so many things going on in your life, the anxiety disorders, the fact that you had to work 3 jobs. You really, at a time when I suppose most young people would be out going clubbing, boozing and sort of having a wild time, you seem to go completely the opposite path. Did it ever come to a point where you thought, I can't do this? This is 5 years of extreme effort just to go on an extended holiday? Or was the passion so in you that nothing was going to stop you achieving your aim?
I think it was a bit of both. There were a few times where I really got sick of all of the changes I was making, so that I could save money. I remember one winter where it was like -2 degrees, and I was sat inside and I'd refused to turn on the heating because I was like, I must save money. And I was sat there in the dark with like 10 blankets on top of me with my laptop, and I was just like, yeah, this is pretty miserable. I'm not quite sure why I'm taking it so much to the extreme to save like a few pennies. So there were definitely moments like that where I was like, okay, I need to calm down with the extreme saving. But I do think that I decided that I wanted to make travel my priority. And I knew that I would have to sacrifice a lot of things to build up my savings. But I also found that I thought that it would be worth it. I thought that saving like £50 on a night out could actually be like 3 nights in Thailand. And I thought that, well, I'm saving all my money now, but then in a few years when I'm actually traveling, I'll be able to get more for my money and hopefully be having better experiences that are more memorable. So I did struggle a bit, especially when my friends were having lots of fun and I was like, no, I'm not going to go out tonight because I need to save money. But I think that it was definitely worth it in the end.
Do you know, Lauren, I'm going to get my wife to listen to this episode because I think that you are the perfect wife to be. You're not married at the moment, are you?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Well, any of the fellas out there, if you're looking to get a wife, a lady who will quite happily turn the heating off and save a few quid. My wife, basically, in July would be happy to have it like gas mark 5 in our house with the sweat pouring off her. So I think credit to you. You are the perfect lady. And I'll be honest, if she ever dumps me, I know where you are.
Yes, you do.
You won't answer my calls. You won't answer my emails. I've frightened you off now. I promise you. So 17th of July, you've had this effort and you've had all the sort of working 3 jobs and stuff, and you are going to the airport. And as you were saying in your blog, you cried like a baby. Was that because you were scared? Was that because the achievement had become real, or was it just a combination?
I think it was definitely, I was scared more than anything. I think I had managed to convince myself I was making a huge mistake. I know that my parents weren't really happy about me traveling and having to say goodbye to them, and not because I didn't have an end date to my trip. I didn't know when the next time I'd see them would be. So I was upset about saying goodbye to them. And also just because I'd had very unsupportive friends when I decided I wanted to travel. A lot of my friends were like, oh, you're not going to last. You'll be home within a few weeks. And I don't think that you'll enjoy travel, and you're really bad at like living, so you'll be terrible at traveling. And I think having so many people convinced that I was going to fail had convinced me that I was making a huge mistake and that I'd be home within a week. So I was very concerned about that. I think I was just anxious in general because I'd never traveled on my own before, and I'd never traveled for more than 2 weeks at a time. And I didn't really feel that I knew how to travel because I'd never really done it before. I didn't have much life experience I ate really bland food. I'd never eaten eggs before. I'd never eaten rice. I never had Thai food or Chinese food or Indian food or Mexican food. So I ate really bland food. So I was terrified about what I would have to eat. I'd never taken a bus before because they frightened me. So I lived a very sheltered life at
Can
home.
I just stop you there? You were
Yes.
frightened of a bus. How?
Yes, I was.
How is anyone frightened of a bus?
I think it was because I never really had a need to go on a bus when I was growing up. And then it reached the point where I was about 20 and I was like, I've never been on a bus before. I'm not really sure how they work, so I'm going to keep avoiding them. And then it just reached the point where it became like this huge obstacle where I was like, I don't understand what you do on a bus. So I was too frightened to actually get on one and ask. So I avoided them until I started traveling.
But logically, I'm not belittling this in any shape or form because this is interesting to me. But I would think that most people would know that it takes you somewhere, first of all, and it's not going to be free. So you've got to find out where it's going and pay to get on. So as a sort of sensible lady as you are, I find it amazing that it was a mindset, wasn't it? It was a mindset trying to route you to where you are by creating obstacles that just weren't there.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, now I can take buses fine, and I have no idea why I was so frightened or why I refused to ever step on one.
I had a lady, I used to be a manager years ago, and she was, when I was up in the city, and she came up to me one day and she said, David, can I have next week off? And I said, well, no, you can't really, because we haven't got cover. And she said, I really need to. I've got an opportunity to conquer something that is ruining my life. And I thought, right, okay, this is quite important. So I said to her, okay, let me have a look at it and we can see what we can do. Could you tell me what is ruining your life? And she said, yes, I've got a fear of sharks. And I could never understand that at all. And I said to her, no, honestly, if it was buses or air or outside or birds or something, I could understand it. But with something like that, just keep away from them. And pretty much, unless you're walking down the high street and you hear dun dun, it's never going to happen to you, is it? You just keep away from the water and the fears aren't there. But with a bus, I suppose I am kind of belittling it slightly, I'll be honest with you, but it is something. I do that too. It is something that is everywhere, isn't it? And no matter where you are going in any town, there are going to be buses and taxis, and I suppose that is something that if you have got a fear of it, or if you don't understand it, it could really stop you in your tracks. So why did you overcome that? Because that is just something else that could have kept you where you are.
I know. I think I got very fed up with not having much life experience. And I know that my friends would always laugh at me and kind of just think I was really strange because I was like, oh, no, I can't take a bus there. I'll just take a taxi instead. I think that I was fed up with feeling like I couldn't really function in life. I felt like I wasn't really living and I was afraid of too many things, and it was time for me to force myself out of my comfort zone.
Do you know the other thing that's interesting about you as well is, and I've heard this on so many conversations, about how our peer group, i.e. our friends, the people that love us, actually are the most unsupportive at times. When you've got a dream, when you've got a passion, when you've got something that you want to do, because they don't actually want you to improve, they want you to stay where you are because they feel comfortable. They then don't have something to prove to themselves. They will hold you back, and you're not alone with your unsupportive peer group. It's a strange thing that the people that care about us most are the ones that root us to where we are.
Yeah, and I've realized since I traveled, I'm not friends with half of the people that I used to be back home, just because they were so unsupportive. And even when I started traveling and I was having all of these successes and things were going well, they were always trying to find a way to still laugh at me. Or I'd had like 2 months of really great travel and then I got scammed. And then I'd have some friends being like, haha, I told you that would happen. And I'd be like, okay, I think I probably would like to cut you out of my life because you're not really improving it in any way. You're just looking for a way to make me feel silly.
I did the same. I actually looked at my email. I was sitting at home one day and I was looking at all the emails that I have, all the contacts, and I realised that probably 90% of the people I never spoke to, and 10% I did, but when I went out with them, they just brought me down. And then there was about 5 people that I thought, yeah, actually, if I got rid of everyone, these are the 5 that I think would big me up and support me and tell me I'm being stupid, the real friends. So I emailed everyone and I said to them, hi guys, you might remember me. I don't really want to see you anymore. If you want to come back and say, yes, I do want to see you and I fancy having a pint, I will meet up with you, but otherwise just delete me. And people were going, you can't do that. That's so rude. And it hasn't changed my life in any way other than positive.
Yeah, and the same happened to me. I thought that if I just stopped talking to people, if I got rid of them on Facebook, and I thought that it would really disrupt every friendship I had, and that maybe they'd get really angry and try and turn my other friends against me. Nothing happened. And then I was much happier because I didn't feel like anytime something bad happened to me, I'd have people waiting to go, I knew that would happen.
Have you been astonished by the support that you've had from complete strangers?
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that in the slightest. Just the emails I get every day from people that are like, oh, you've inspired me to travel. Especially with the anxiety as well, a lot of people who have struggled from anxiety who have read my story and can relate to it and are like, you've shown me that I can travel too. And lots of people, if I get scammed or if I have like something really bad happen, I feel like there's this outpouring of love from people that I've never met before, just saying, oh, I hope you're okay, and why don't you try this and this and this. And it feels like I have a lot of people looking out for me, and most of them I haven't even met before, which is a little strange.
But it's the weird thing, I'm in this world now. I'm in an online world. I'm having a conversation with yourself and loving every second of what we're talking about. And within an hour, I'm having a conversation with somebody else. And the fact that you guys are willing to speak to me, first of all, still blows my mind. Why they don't think, what a nutter this bloke is. He comes out of nowhere and says, would you want to come on a show that I've never heard of? And all those kind of thoughts go around my mind. But the emails that I've been getting from people that have just been saying, I love what you're doing. Thanks for putting the work out there. I really like this guest. I really like that guest. It makes me realise that actually the world is a good place. And there are probably 95% brilliant people out there, 3% horrible people, and 2% serial killers.
Yes, I agree.
I don't know if those stats are completely made up. They're not factually correct in any shape or form, but it kind of seems right, I think, that the world is a good place to be.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of really great people, and travel has definitely helped me to realize that people aren't trying to kill you all the time. I know that I was really nervous before I left to travel that I wouldn't be able to trust any strangers. And I really had my guard up. I think a lot of that is a British thing as well, and unwillingness to talk to strangers on the tube. And I found that when I traveled, it took quite a few months for me to get out of my shell and actually enjoy talking to strangers and realizing they had an interesting story to tell, and that they were actually really great, friendly people that wanted to help me. And they weren't, weirdos that wanted to stab me.
You have had some weird things that have happened, though, haven't you? And I'll be honest. I am a dad. I'm a dad of 4 daughters and a son, and I don't think I would want my daughter to be putting some of these things on there, because I would read them and be going, Lauren, you're coming home. You're coming home. I don't want this to occur. Now, I'm just going to give you some kind of the highlights on this. So if anybody wants to go over it and read these, and I hope you will because they are brilliant, it's www.neverendingfootsteps.com-the incident. So go for the incidents. So first of all, right, and these are some of the key points of Lauren's life. Getting scammed in Shanghai and then punching my scammer. Right, that's pretty ballsy. So give us an overview of that. Where did you find? Was that the first person you've ever punched in your life?
Yes, it was, and it was very out of character. I'm normally very timid and shy, and I didn't ever think that I'd find myself in a situation where I was punching somebody. But so I was scammed in Shanghai. It was one of my very first days in Asia, and I was a bit overwhelmed with culture shock. I wasn't really sure how to behave or how to function in China. And these two local girls came up to me, and they were really friendly, and we stood chatting for about an hour. And they were just really lovely people. And as we turned to say goodbye, they suddenly said, oh, it's a festival in China today, and we're going to a traditional tea ceremony. So if you'd like to come with us, you're welcome to come. And I was like, wow, this is the sort of travel experience I'd hoped to have when I first left, to meet locals and experience some of the culture. So I agreed to go with them. And we had the tea ceremony, and then when the bill came out at the end, I found out that it was actually a scam, and they were charging me something like £70 for 5 cups of tea that were they were tiny, they were like a few centimeters high. It was a mouthful. So it was just samples of tea, and they were trying to charge me £70 for that. And then so we had an argument about that, and then they tried to scam me in other ways. They invited me to a circus performance that actually was a scam, and I'd realized that because I'd read about it. And then when we left the ceremony and I was walking back to my hostel, and the girls were still walking with me, and I was getting really worked up and really angry at them for pretending to be my friends and then betraying me to scam me. And then as I turned to say, look, I don't want to hang out with you, I'm just going to leave, I saw one of them with her hand in my purse, and she was pulling out my money and my passport and was trying to rob me after they'd scammed me. And that was when I completely lost my temper and punched her in the face.
And did she go down?
No, she did not. It was not a very hard punch. I'm not very strong.
Have you developed your Rocky skills since then?
I have not, no.
Lauren, you need to learn. You know, because you could have used those skills. The other thing that struck me on the incidents was the monkeys of Monkey Forest may look cute, but they are evil, evil creatures. You got attacked by monkeys in Bali. Yes,
that was very frightening. They have a small park in Bali that's called Monkey Forest, and there are monkeys everywhere. And you can pay money to feed the monkeys, but they have rules at the entrance to Monkey Forest saying do not bring in any bags or any personal items because the monkeys will take them from you. And I was aware of this, but I also forgot about it when I was walking around the outskirts of the park, and I was walking back to my hotel, and I just had a bottle of Coke in a plastic bag, and I was just walking along, and then all of a sudden I looked up and there were these crowd of monkeys blocking my path, and they were all staring at me, and I was like, this doesn't seem good.
Were they wearing hoodies?
They were not wearing hoodies, but they were quite terrifying. And so one of them was baring its teeth at me and hissing, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I thought, oh, well, maybe it's just like pigeons, and I can just stamp my feet and they will run away and be frightened. So I tried stamping my feet at them, but that seemed to annoy them even more, and they started coming closer to me. So I was backing away, and then one of them darted forwards, and it grabbed my plastic bag and ripped it from my arms and took out my Coke bottle and ran away with it. And I was like, oh no. And I didn't know what to do, and there were monkeys everywhere. So I just freaked out and I started running. And I was running along, and then there was a monkey chasing after me, and it had enormous teeth, and it was like, it was hissing at me. And then I slipped, and then I fell down flat on my face and ripped up all of my legs and my knees. And then I was just lying there crying, thinking the monkey was about to attack me and sink its teeth into my legs, and I'd get rabies and probably die. And so I was just lying there screaming and crying. And then I looked up and realized that the monkey had actually run away, and there was just a group of Japanese tourists stood staring at me and wondering what on earth I was doing.
Because I would not go into a monkey forest. If somebody says to me monkey forest, I instantly think of those ones in The Wizard of Oz. Do you remember with the wings?
Yes.
And there's no way that I would think to myself, you go to a zoo, they're behind bars. That's the reason why. They're wild animals. So if somebody says to me, okay, we've got a lion forest, definitely not. If they say we've got a zebra forest, probably still not. But monkeys, as you say, they've got hands. They can do things. They can open Coke bottles. So that was a bit weird. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because this is we could keep going because they're truly dreadful. So I'm just going to list these. Having an elderly woman die on my slow boat in Laos and then sitting next to her for 6 hours, that's not good. Falling into a rice paddy in Bali, not good. Being in Indonesia when an earthquake occurred and being told a tsunami was heading our way. You don't get these at Devon. That's one of the best parts of going on a Devon. But the one that I read, and I'm not going to get too into it because it is kind of personal, but I did think to myself, Lauren, what were you doing? It was your massage in Bangkok. And I'm just going to summarise this. But Lauren decides to go to Bangkok and have a massage. She didn't have a lot of money, so they went for the cheapest place they could find. And it was an elderly woman in a very shady room who insisted that they were totally naked for the massage. Now, that's the first part that I would think to myself, how much of my body is tense? I don't need to take everything off. But Lauren goes, this sounds right, I'm going to do this. And then for 10 minutes, she has her top half massaged. Didn't once go, hang on, this sounds a bit wrong, once again, and let the old lady do it. And then the old lady kind of went into areas that you wouldn't want to go. Wasn't there one part in that whole episode that you kind of thought, hang on, this can't be right, I must stop this?
No, there wasn't. And I think that comes down to my lack of common sense. But at the time, it was my very first day in Thailand. And I thought, well, I'd never had a Thai massage before. So I was like, maybe this is just what they're like. And I was with a friend at the time who had had a Thai massage before. And she didn't seem to think it was strange to remove your clothes. So I was like, okay, maybe this is normal. This is a little uncomfortable, but okay. And then, I just thought, and when she was massaging my boobs, I was like, well, maybe this is just what's meant to happen.
For 10
I think
minutes?
I just had no idea. Yes.
How much massage can you do in 10 minutes?
Well, it was very awkward, and I couldn't stop laughing.
Because I haven't, I'm going to say the word because you said it. I haven't got boobs at all. I've got a kind of timeshare situation that if I'm good, I've got the potential of having some. My wife's going to kill me for saying that. But even that I haven't got anything, it's wrong. It's wrong, Lauren. You shouldn't have done it.
Yes, well, I realise that now.
Well, I'm glad. And if you ever go into somewhere and it says monkey massage, would you do it?
No, definitely not.
It's a bad thing. So go onto her website because it is brilliant. There's so much on there, and you are a real writer. And what I like about your writing style, it sounds like the person that I'm talking to now. It was almost that I knew you before we pressed record, and you have created that ability to be naturally you on the written page.
Yeah, I think it was very important for me to have a personal site because those are the type of blogs I like reading. I like reading personal stories. I don't need to read about 5 things to do in Bangkok. I want to read personal stuff, and I want to read honest writing that shows the good and the bad aspects of travel. So I tried to write in a style that I would want to read as a reader.
Well, you've done a brilliant job, I tell you what, because people will be flying over there and drop her emails from all over the world to say that you love her work, because it really is great. And and especially if you work in Iceland, if you are in a supermarket putting shelves up and stuff, well, you wouldn't put shelves up, that's stupid, but filling shelves, and send her some emails to say, I'm in that situation, I am Lauren of 10, 15 years ago. So what I want to do now, Lauren, I just want to play, there's a part of this show that we do, which is the theme of the whole show, and that's when we look back at the words of Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs made a speech back in 2005, which I'm going to play now, which really is the sort of mantra for the show, that we don't know what's going to happen, we can only trust, we can only have faith, we need to move forward, and by looking back and joining up our dots, we can actually see that path. And I'm going to play this, and I want to see, as I do to all guests, how relevant it is to your life and your life going forward. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
Well, you're on a path that you could not have imagined when you was a young girl. So do those words, do they have relevance to you?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of the really bad things that happened to me when I was younger, I can now look back on and see that they were actually positive. An example is my boyfriend broke up with me about a year before I left to travel. And he was a long-term boyfriend, and he was someone who I was originally going to travel with him. We were going to, as soon as I graduated from uni, we were going to set off and travel the world for a year and then return back to normal life. So then when he broke up with me, I was devastated, and I thought that I wouldn't be able to travel because, well, I hadn't been on a bus and I didn't know how to eat foreign food, and I was frightened of everything. So it was really tough for me to decide to travel alone, and at the time it felt like the worst possible thing to have ever happened to me. Whereas now when I look back on that 3 years on, I can see that actually the breakup was the best thing to have ever happened to me, because that was the catalyst for me to start traveling solo, and it was why I started my travel blog to record my travels, and it's because of that travel blog that I'm still traveling now. So I see that actually if he hadn't have broken up with me and we'd have done our 1 year trip around the world, I'd be back home now, and I don't think I would have grown as a person in the way that I have. I wouldn't have had such great stories as I do now. And I think that having all of the bad things happen to me, which happened because I was traveling on my own, they actually turned out to be really great things that helped me to grow as a person. So actually the breakup was one of the best things that could have happened to me. But at the time I felt like, my travel dreams are over, my life's over, I don't know what I'm going to do now. But actually it was quite a positive thing.
Does he ever contact you and say, Lauren, I've made a mistake, please let me come out?
No, that has never happened.
Well, I don't like the man. I'll be honest. If anyone is out there and they've got the opportunity to travel, especially with somebody, I would say to my daughters, I would say to my son, do it. Because commuting up to London and back every day isn't going to teach you anything, is it? But life experience, cultures, different way of eating, different way of cooking, it will change you beyond anything you can possibly get out of a book or just going to a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, I had no life experience, and I'm pretty certain that if I'd stayed in the UK, I would still have no life experience. I probably still wouldn't have been on a bus, and I probably still wouldn't have eaten rice, and I would have still been afraid of everything.
Now, I'm going to list some of the places that you've been, because 193 countries. Now, that I paused there for a moment because that kind of made my brain go funny. There's a lot more than 193 countries, isn't there? But that's from the United Nations list. So there's a load of kind of weird little countries that are springing out all over the place. So there must be a lot more than that, I imagine. But you've done 47 out of the 193 using the United Nations list. You have done 5 out of 7 continents. You have done 59 out of 962 World Heritage Sites. You have done Africa, Asia, Australia and Oceania, Central America, Europe, Middle East, North America, where you've lived, Thailand, and I can't pronounce some of these names, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, London, the United States, Mexico, and where's next then? So on that list, it's pretty getting red. There's a map that I'm looking at, and the countries where Lauren has been are red, and where she is now is blue. So there's not a great deal of white left to explore. You've got Greenland to go to. Why haven't you done Greenland?
Very expensive and hard to get to, and also I don't think there's an awful lot there. I think it's just a lot of ice. I would like to get there eventually, but I think that will probably be one of the last countries on my list.
Have you done all of Europe? Because I'm squinting at this map, and it looks like you haven't done places like Cyprus and stuff.
I've been to Cyprus, but there are definitely a few places missing. There's Scandinavia I haven't been to, and also the northeastern places up near Latvia and Estonia. I haven't been to those yet. So there's still a few places missing, but I've definitely seen quite a lot of Europe.
So when you're out there, is there a plan to your travel, or do you go to a place and then you meet someone and they go, "Oh, Lauren, you've got to go over there," and then you go, "Oh, okay, that's where I'll go next," or is it a plan where you know your next route?
It's a bit of both. I normally have a very rough plan as to the region I want to explore, but I won't book any flights or really plan specific dates. And so I will leave if I want. When I feel like I've been in a country enough and I want to go somewhere else, then I'll decide to leave, or if my visa runs out and I have to leave. So at the moment, I'm planning to spend the rest of the year in kind of Southeast Asia and South Asia, but that could change. My original plan at the start of the year was to spend all of 2014 in South America, and now I'm back in Asia, so my plans often really don't stick, and I will change my mind. And because I don't have onward travel booked, I can just change my mind and decide to go somewhere if I feel like it.
Is that a key thing to do? Anyone out there who is planning a trip like this, I can imagine they're sitting at home, they've got their laptop on, and they're planning everything to an inch of its life, and they know where they're going to be here for 2 days and where they're going to be there. I suppose it's a comfort blanket into the unknown. Yeah. But once you actually get into it and you realise that there's a liberation, there's a freedom, is it better not to actually plan and book anything and just go with the flow?
Yes, that's definitely the way to do it. I made the mistake of my first month of travel. I'd booked everything. So I'd booked all of my accommodation. I'd booked flights from different countries, and I knew exactly where I was going to be. I'd even planned what activities I was going to do on each day. And I was pretty miserable for that first month because I was meeting people and I was making friends, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to go to Bosnia for the weekend. Do you want to come with me?" And I'd be like, "Well, I can't because I've got a train ticket booked to Slovenia. So I guess that's goodbye then." So I'd meet people that were going somewhere that I'd want to go with them but couldn't. Or also on the other hand, I'd sometimes go places that I didn't like them, and I'd planned to spend a week somewhere. And I got there and I was like, "Nah, I don't really like it here." But I couldn't leave for a week because that was when my plane ticket was. So I would just end up really frustrated and bored and spending time where I didn't want to be. So I found that as soon as I stopped making plans and allowed my travels to just be pretty free and relaxed, then I would make up my mind to go wherever I want, whenever I wanted. I found that I was much happier. And then I did meet people that were like, "Hey, we're going to go to the Philippines. Do you want to come?" And I'd never considered going to the Philippines, but I was having a great time with them. So I flew to the Philippines with them, and it turned out to be one of my favorite countries because of that. So I definitely think if you don't make plans, then you're much more open to new experiences and doing things that you didn't expect. And often those are the things that are most memorable.
Have you ever seen the film Hostel?
I haven't.
Don't watch.
I was too afraid to watch it.
Yes, don't watch the film Hostel. It's I'm not even going to tell you about it. If anybody wants to know what I'm talking about, go online. But it will certainly stop you travelling. I'll promise you.
Yes, I'd had many friends before I left to travel be like, "Oh my God, have you seen Hostel? Like that's going to happen. You will die." And I was like, "Nope, I am not watching that."
No, don't go with it. Don't go with Hostel 1, 2 and 3 or whatever they've gone to. It's a bad place to go, Lauren. So if somebody out there is listening to you and is really inspired, are there websites and resources that you would go, yes, that's where you should go to start getting an idea? Or is it simply to come to your website, neverendingfootsteps.com, and all the tips and the links to other websites, are they there? Where should they go?
Well, there's quite a few places you can go, but I don't actually recommend one particular source because they're so different and they'll say different things, and some sources will be outdated. So what I'll do is if I'm going to a new country, I'll usually go to Wikitravel and read about the country and the city and try and get an idea for what it will be like. I'll do a Google image search. I'll look for travel blog posts about the place where I'm going. I'll even look at YouTube videos, and so I can get a good feel for it. But really, I don't research that much about a place before I get there because I don't want to have expectations that may disappoint me, which has happened a few times. So I really try not to read up on it. In terms of things like what to take with you and how to stay safe, you can find that on my site, even in amongst all of the incidents that I had. But there's loads and loads of travel blogs out there, and a quick search on Google will give you so much information.
What's the worst place you've been to? If your ex-boyfriend suddenly comes out the woodwork and contacts you and says to you, "Where should I go, Lauren? Where's amazing?" What is the worst place that we can send him?
China. I really did not like China. It was my least favorite country.
You've only insulted probably, 15 billion people, but you could have gone with, I don't know, some tiny little the Diomedes or something. But China. So what was wrong with China, other than the toiletry? That must be bad.
Yeah, it was a very stressful country for me, and actually I would like to return and try and have a different experience because I think it was the first country I visited in Asia, and I was very out of my comfort zone and a little closed-minded still at that point. But I found that it was quite dirty. The kids would wear these trousers that had a slit on the bottom so that they could just have a poo on the street, which was kind of gross. I found that there was lots of the locals would be spitting quite a lot, and the food made me quite sick. I had food poisoning for a lot of the time I was there, and it was just having so many people in such small spaces, and everyone they didn't queue in China. They would if you were trying to get on a train, you would have old women elbowing you to the ground to try and get on before you. So it was quite aggressive, and I definitely did struggle quite a bit with the dirt and the manners.
But I love the fact that you are so in touch with yourself now and so confident and so obviously such a different person to when Never Ending Footsteps started. But even though it was a bad experience, you are still willing enough to go, hang on, that might just have been when I was there before. Now I'm a different person. I could make it a different experience. Do you not think that's absolutely brilliant, or do you just not think about it anymore, that you can do that mentally?
I think it's pretty great. I definitely wasn't really very much in touch with myself when I first started traveling, but I think just being aware that I have grown as a person and that I'm a lot more open-minded and I'm a lot more tolerant of different cultures and I'm not so judgmental, I think is really important, and just willing to give a country a second try. I know that some people I know have been to Thailand, which is one of my favorite countries, and hated it because of some bad experiences that ruined their time there. And I think, well, it's just as likely those could have happened to me when I was in Thailand. And I think it depends a lot on the circumstances when you visit. So you're just as likely for me to return to China and just have a really great time. So there aren't any countries where I'd say, no, I will never return to that country, because I think that the next time I return, I could have a much more positive experience.
Well, good on you. That's what I say. I think you are a lady that if we get you back on the show in another 4 years, it's going to be a totally different story again. Well, can you imagine settling? You know, obviously you're still young and you're still sort of progressing through, but there might come a time where you think to yourself, actually, I wouldn't mind having a family and settling down. Do you think you would come back to England, or now you've seen so much of the world, do you think, no, actually, I'm going to go off to a different place?
I'm not sure. I say that I don't really want to settle down in the future at the moment, but I know that that could be quite easily changed. So I'm leaving all of that open. I don't think that I would return to the UK permanently. I think just, having seen so many great places, I know that when I live in Thailand, I spend £300 a month for an amazing quality of life, where I have a great apartment with a cleaner and a gym and a swimming pool, and I eat out for every single meal and can rent a scooter. So I know that I can have a great quality of life for £300 a month. So then when I think of what I'd have to pay in the UK to get all of that, then it's a bit like, oh, well, now I'm kind of aware that it's so easy to live cheaply in other parts of the world. So I'm not sure. I can see my travels definitely slowing down, and me spending 3 months in different places around the world, and definitely tying in 3 months in the UK to see my family for Christmas or over summer. So I can see that happening, but I'm not sure that I could, at the moment, commit to one place, because there's so many that I love.
Well, we're at the end of the show now, Lauren, so this is the last bit of travel that I'm going to force on you, and this is time travel. You don't get that travelling around the world, and this is when I send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. So I'm going to play the theme tune to Sermon on the Mic, and when it fades out, you're in a room with the younger Lauren. And what age would you choose? Would it be the Lauren at Iceland? Would it be the younger Lauren shouting at your family in a caravan in Devon? So the music's going to play. I'm going to remain totally quiet, and this is you on the mic. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Ooh, ah, ooh, here we go with the best bit of the show. The Sermon on the Mic. The Sermon on the Mic. Ooh, ah,
Hi, Lauren. Okay, so at the moment you're having panic attacks every day, and you're full of anxiety, and you have no idea what you're doing. You don't know if you should be studying physics or whether you should leave to travel, and you're just frightened of everything. You want to travel the world, but you feel like you're too frightened to do so, and you're too frightened to live. And I think that, while it's easy to give into the belief that terrible things will happen the minute you leave your house, it's important to accept that, well, actually, yes, bad things will happen to you, and especially to you, they will happen all the time. And it seems unfair, that everyone else seems to pass through life quite easily, while you seem to be scammed and robbed and attacked and have terrible things happen. But actually, you need to learn that the awful things happening to you will give you an advantage over everyone else, because first of all, it ensures you never run out of having really funny stories. And secondly, it helps you to grow as a person far more effectively than you would if only really amazing things happened to you. Having terrible luck doesn't mean that your life and overall experiences are going to be just terrible. As soon as you realize that it's your fear of the unknown that is stopping you and causing all the problems in your life rather than the bad events yourself, you'll find that your anxiety is far easier to control. And if you're forever worrying about something bad happening, you just need to go outside and see that actually when you step outside, those things never happen, or if they do, it's something that you weren't preparing for at all. And then when that happens, you realize that it's not so bad, and you can deal with the situation and you can get over it. And once you do that, that's what helps you to grow as a person.
I loved all that. And I think there's so many people out there that will be listening to that and be totally frightened that a bad thing could happen. And that really is the sort of mantra to the show that so many of the guests have been saying, at my worst time, when it was at the darkest moment, that, looking back, was actually my best thing, because that made me grow. That took me out my comfort zone. That pushed me on the path that I was. And without that, you can't. You're just going to be sitting on your bed with Netflix every night, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I was like that. And then I set out to travel. And even though really terrible things happened, it's turned me into a much better person. And I've really grown because of that.
Well, I do think that you are a great person, Lauren. I'm so pleased that you've been on the show, because I started to think it's something about me that you didn't want to come on, because we were sort of cancelling so many times. Your cough's got better, I see. Last time we almost got you on the show, you had a really bad cough, and I was dying as well. So I'm glad to hear that you're feeling better. And I do think that you are the perfect lady out there. You know, so a lady that is willing to embrace full frontal nudity with strangers. Brilliant. A lady who is willing to have no heating on at the coldest part. Absolutely perfect. And simply, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. So how do people connect with you, Lauren? Obviously, we've been talking about the website, neverendingfootsteps.com. Are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter and all those sort of normal social media platforms?
Yes, I'm on Facebook, which you can just search for Never Ending Footsteps and you'll find me. And my Twitter username is NE Footsteps. And you can also email me at lauren@neverendingfootsteps.com.
Lovely. Okay, well, please come back again. We have more dots to join up, because I believe the only way to build our futures is by connecting our pasts. Lauren Juliff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.